Hello, happy Tuesday. Welcome back to another episode of The Practice. The show is an unrehearsed look into my creative process. I'm Stuart. I'm a 3D artist, illustrator, and your pal. And I'm excited to have you back for another episode, number 224. This is kind of a fun one, a little bit different from the types of things I typically do. And I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to make outside of one of these types of sort of like biomechanical spacesuit kind of deals that we're looking at now. This is something I've been experimenting with over the past week or so. I'm using displacers and image textures and symmetry tools inside of Photoshop to create these sort of concepts in a fairly quick and iterative manner, which is really fun. Plus, it's interesting and really enjoyable for me to sometimes just to get into Photoshop and play around with some of the paint brushes. And what you can't see is that I've got a Wacom tablet in front of me, so I'll be doing some digital painting in collaboration, or in conjunction, I should say, with some of the photographic textures that I'll be using, and I'll be jumping back and forth between Photoshop and Cinema 4D quite a bit. You'll sort of see the process that I use to generate these types of images. You can see that there's little issues, like it's not a very efficient way to UV map things. There's wasted image space sort of in the sides, and that the wrap isn't necessarily perfect. And there are going to be little issues like maybe the toes are overlapping. But it's a fun and quick way to create a lot of concept art and to iterate quickly. Not a good way necessarily to create sort of production models. But in any case, let's dive into it. So what I did to start is, I don't see anyone in the chat, so I'm going to restart this. Sometimes I have issues with the chat. So what I'm starting with here is just a very simple human figure. This I've gotten from Daz 3D, which is a free 3D software program that allows you to create humanoid sort of characters. I'm going to just get rid of all these materials that it comes with. I've deleted them from here, and I also, for whatever reason, they put the geometry inside of the structure of the skeleton, the sort of rig here. I'm going to get rid of that. Also, for whatever reason, the eyelashes are in here. I'm going to get rid of that, just sort of clean this up. I think you can get rid of this whole eyelash hierarchy. This is going to have, yeah, the rest of our stuff. Cool. What I also like to do is kind of exaggerate the proportions a little bit. So I'm actually just going to grab some of these bones here and just increase them in scale a little bit. I find this to be a little bit more interesting. And of course, everything below it in the hierarchy is also being increased in scale. So I'm starting small. I'm working my way up. We'll get to some of the fun stuff soon. I'm going to modify that one, the forearm. Let's go 1.1, 1.1, 1.1, and the hand as well. Oops. You can get into posing and stuff with all this. I'm not going to do that for the moment. And now that he's got enormous arms, I should probably do the same for the legs. So 1.1, 1.1, 1.1. That's probably a little too large on the legs. So let's grab this thigh. 1.5, 1.5. And it's just a subtle change, but I kind of like it. The other thing I want to do here is sort of separate the head and create this helmet shape. I have a couple different variations on how the helmet goes. I'm going to try a different one today. The other thing I did is I have this simple sort of glassy visor material. And I think what I'm going to do is maybe make that see-through in this version. And then we can show the face poking through a little bit. Yeah, so there you go. What's up, Caesar? Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. Why don't I fire up this viewer as well. And let's make this square format. just so we get rid of those annoying lines. Cool. All right. So let's just start with a sphere here. The helmet. I'm going to rough that in. And again, we're going to keep the geometry really, really simple here because almost all of the heavy lifting is going to be done by the textures that we're going to be using. So we're just sort of setting up our base model before we lay in the textures. So started with a sphere, and like I said, I want it to be a simple shape, but I do want to modify it a little bit enough so that it's not just a sphere, so that it's got a little bit of a unique shape. And I'm going to keep it sort of organic and smooth looking. Maybe the face is a little flatter. Let's how to do this. Let's start with just a Boolean. We'll knock out that sort of visor area. Let's just start with cube. I need to modify this, of course, but you get the idea. How's that for a helmet? That's very space-aged, huh? I'm just going to go ahead and expand that cube. Maybe the bottom of the helmet area just sort of opens up a little bit. It's a little wider. Almost kind of like a jawline shape. And lastly, that's okay for now. I might wind up modifying this a little further, but you can see how this simple shape is going to yield a lot of interesting results. And let's just throw a cloth surface on there. Give it a little bit of thickness. Oops. One should be enough. Cool. There we go. So we got some depth, some thickness. And then one last thing is I want to separate the face shape from the rest of the body because the rest of the body is going to be the suit, so to speak. So let's see if we can find a nice loop selection that'll work for us. This is making it hard to see actually, so let's turn that soft selection off. I'm not going to be super concerned about the rear side of this. I think this technique is really solid for concept art, for illustrations, and that sort of thing. It's not going to be great for production, but you could bake this down and simplify it, or just use it as concept art, sell sort of the idea, and then go back and re-topo it and make it properly, all that good stuff. So okay, so I've made two versions of this. One I'm going to delete the face from. Let's get rid of all that. And then let's call this one the suit. And this one, maybe just the head. So, or just the face, I should say. Well, no, really, it is. It's less of the head. I don't want to delete these. Cool. Let's delete that. I'm just going to hit U and N. Delete that. Cool. And then the last thing I'm going to do to sort of prep this model is just lighten up some of the superfluous details on this suit, right? So I'm not sure that I want, you know, like nipple topology and stuff like that to come through. So I'm going to delete a few things and just simplify just a little bit. So this is going to work better for our purposes. Read a little bit less like someone's body. Do the same thing over here. Delete that. Polygon hole. And just do a little bit of cutting with the knife tool. Then what I'm going to do is just kind of relax all this. I just realized I didn't do this symmetrically, so let's just tidy that up. And then let's just grab brush tool, make sure symmetry is on. I'm just holding shift to just kind of relax all of this. Also just going to draw in just a little bit more mass. Should probably get rid of this belly button too. I'm just holding shift, clicking on this to sort of relax it a little bit. And then all right, cool. I think that is a good start. All right, now let's get to some of the more fun parts. So we've got our suit and our helmet. I'm going to put the helmet inside of this suit for the moment, just so I can texture them together. And now let's jump back over to Photoshop. I'm going to close all of these and open up a fresh texture. So let's make a new file. I'm just going to do 2400 by 2400 at the moment. And I've got a couple images that I want to start from. A lot of these textures I created using, using a few things. One was this sort of painterly texture, and the other was, photographic textures that I wound up making symmetrical inside of Photoshop. So maybe we play with both of these. Let's see if we can't get both to work. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this, which is a simple stock photo I found on the internet. And I'm going to use it to just inject a ton of detail, right? So let's duplicate this. I'm going to flip horizontally so we have some symmetry, right? Let's check out our layers here. Come on out. There we go. All right. So I'm going to grab both of these, and Photoshop, if you have Smart Guides turned on, should snap that to the middle automatically, which is where I'm going to keep it. And I'll probably also, oops, grab both of these, duplicate those, flip them vertically. Now we've got some more symmetry going on. You can see we're building up some really interesting detail, and it doesn't quite look like a factory anymore. We've got interesting stuff going on here. I'm going to go ahead and make the background a solid dark color. Let's see here. I'm not loving that. I'm going to get rid of it. I'm going to make a copy of all these layers. I'm going to get Control E to squish them together. And that's just so I can copy this central part. I'm just going to stretch, send back. Now we're starting to build some stuff here. So let's get this into the 3D model, and you can start seeing what we're working with here. All right, so I'm going to make a new, let's see. Let's go with a specular material. I'm going to open up the node editor. So this is going to be done using Octane. This, at least I'm going to show it using Octane. This is something you definitely could do with just Cinema 4D materials for anyone who's not using Octane. It would be a slightly different technique, but you could just go ahead and insert this into the displacement and other channels right inside of Cinema 4D and get a very similar effect. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drive a lot of channels from the same image. So let's just go ahead and throw an image texture in, load up the image we just created. Just this Photoshop document. So let's start by putting that in the display. Nope, can't do that. Under displacement, I'm going to add a displacement. We'll throw that into the texture channel. That's what we need to do. Whoops. And let's go ahead and cool. Now, that's not what we want, clearly. So let's get this tweaked and set up. All right. So I like to throw this into the roughness channel. Inside of that roughness channel, I'm going to turn blending down here and the overall roughness up a bit. Reflection, do the same thing. Add this. And turn reflection way down. Now this is stuff you could, if you wanted a more metallic, shinier suit, certainly keep the reflection high, or use a metallic texture. the reason I'm using this this type of texture is because I want to go into the medium here, add a scatter, and add this image texture to the scattering, which is going to drive a lot of the color here. The other thing that's going to drive the color is a color in this absorption channel, which I have as black for now, and you can see that some of the colors start to peek through. I'm going to make this a light gray, just a touch. And I'm going to turn the intensity up a little bit. The other thing that I'm going to do is switch over to path tracing, which always looks much better when we're dealing with scattering. And I think I shall also add a light. In fact, let's get some basic lighting set up, because this is all going to look much better under appropriate lighting. I'm just adding a big area light up top. Let's turn the power down on that a bit, make it a little bit warmer. And I'm also going to add a kind of a simple sky light, the gradient. I got a bit of a dark background. I'm going to also just turn the power down a little bit here. Another thing that's going on is our displacement is too high. We don't want it to affect everything quite that much. So let's go into our displacement channel, turn the height. I've found that something around 2 tends to work. That also depends on the scale of your scene, so you might need to play around here. The other thing that happens is we don't have very good quality, and that's because our level of detail is super low. Since I've got like about a 2K image, I'm going to throw this on about 2K, and you can see all of a sudden a lot more detail in the displacement. Our light is still a little too strong. Let's turn that down. And let's also go up a little higher in the medium. It's also because this is a fairly light image texture at the moment. I'm definitely going to go in and modify this and get everything looking really great. You can see with just using this relatively unmodified image texture, we're already getting a bunch of detail pushed into the model. So lots more to explore there. All right. Cool. All right, so here's our image texture. We've got some really stark differences between certain areas, which is not what I want. Maybe I go to a lighter gray here. Let's start blending and fading things together. So here's where I'm going to grab a Wacom tablet, and I've also I've gone in and downloaded a whole bunch of new brushes. I haven't played with brushes a ton, not as much as I should have, really. But I went ahead and just went to Adobe's website, and under the Photoshop page, you can find some supplementary brushes to download, and there's some really great ones in this Kyle's Paint Box set. I think it's called the Mega Pack. There's just a ton in here, so I'm playing with that. And I think what we can do is find something like this brush, this cool drag I've been enjoying. Now I'm just gonna, start pushing out some of these colors here. You can see I'm working in a separate layer. Oh, and I almost forgot one of the really fun things. What I should be doing here, this is another feature that I've discovered recently. I'm going to go ahead and select all and delete what I just did. One of the things that is really, really cool is the symmetry mode. So if I have my brush select, I'm going to hit B for my brush, and I go up here to symmetry. There's going to be all kinds of cool things we can do. I'm going to select mandala at first. Just hit enter. I'm going to turn off these other layers just so you can sort of see what we're doing here. This allows me to draw or paint with this really cool symmetry. That's running a little slow. So one of the cool things with these suit designs is that the center point often has this kind of this like mandala-like radial sort of thing. It's almost like, Iron Man's got that sort of battery pack in his chest. This is sort of the high-tech part of the suit. And you can use these symmetry brushes to come up with a lot of texture really, really quickly. Do some interesting sort of fractally stuff. Right, so then what happens if I take that and overlay it on top of this sort of mechanical stuff, right? It's too big at the moment, but it starts breaking up some of those forms, start making it a little bit more abstract. Other thing I like to do, let's take a quick peek at how that looks. So now that I've got all of my channels, let's put the node in again. Everything's going to be driven off of this same image. So what's cool is I can just come in here and hit reload, and it's going to reload the image with the modifications that I've made in Photoshop. What I'm also going to do is take everything, make it smaller, and bring it down, because we're like up in the helmet area, and I want to position this on the chest. The other thing I'm going to do many other things. What I'm going to do next is grab this image texture and just make it frontal. I'm not going to go into all this, proper UV mapping at the moment, unfortunately. A little Amber Alert from my phone. It's no fun. Okay. So that's a fun little error we're getting. Let's go flat, which is what I wanted. Let's see if we can reload that. Oh, it's unhappy. I'm going to do a quick restart. So I'm going to save this file. Nope. Sorry about that. Sometimes Octane gets unhappy. And now what I can do is reposition this texture, get everything sort of mapped as I like it. I kind of want to go from head to toe on this guy. Get things roughly centered. And you can see what I meant by an inefficient way to UV, because obviously there's huge parts of the map that aren't going to be visible on the model, I should say. So this is just a fun and quick way to do sort of concept art. I wouldn't recommend this necessarily for production, right? But you could bake this down and simplify things, and it would work out great. But that mandala effect was kind of cool. I'm not sure if that's what I want for this, so let's keep pushing it. I'm just gonna make a new layer and use kind of just some dark colors to kind of push and pull sections of this image and use that to drive some contrast into the image so that there's points that are higher and lighter and lower and darker. You'll see what I mean. So I'm also going to turn our symmetry to just a vertical bilateral symmetry, which is basically what we have in the image below, right? And we'll start drawing this in. I'm going to get a cleaner brush. Let's go with like this hard pencil. I think that's going to work. It makes it so easy to just work symmetrically like this. I'm going to find areas that I think are worth sort of highlighting in the model. Like I think this pipe here is really cool. So let's kind of darken the areas around it so that it's more prominent. And this is like sections of this image are extremely detailed. So what we can do is paint over them, simplify areas that we want to simplify areas that we want to be quieter, and intensify areas that we think are worth exacerbating or highlighting, I should say. So I got this set to multiply, and I'm getting distracted here. What I should do is just focus on the darker colors for the moment. And I'm just going to be going back and forth. Let's modify this a little bit too. Another thing you can do to really modify the look of this is with index. If you turn that number way up, you're going to get a much more metallic looking suit. If you turn that down to like stuff approaching 1, anything under 1.2, really, you're going to get a much more matte kind of finish. Now, with this, because we're doing such like a mechanical look, it might be cool to have a little bit more of a specular thing going on. So I'm gonna turn that up to 2.5, somewhere around there. Let's actually return that reflection up as well. And make a duplicate of that, make it metallic. Let's try that out. So here, to get that color, let's go into our node editor. What we're going to have to do is connect our image to the diffuse channel. Maybe this specular as well. Yep, there we go. So now it's a much more reflective thing. And we've got areas that are just in this dark gray. We need to do some blending and make some decisions. But let's go ahead and explore that further off. So I'm going to grab everything we've created so far, make that bigger. I think this stuff looks really cool. So I'm just going to make a copy of it. Get some details going on for other parts of the helmet. Again, let's make another layer on top of this. Start blending these objects. But this is something I haven't mentioned the word yet, but people will call this photobashing. A lot of people do this, with images of landscapes to create really cool backgrounds. I'm going to go ahead and make this image a little bit smaller. I don't necessarily recommend that you do, but because I'm streaming and running this 3D program at once, the computer's getting a little bit laggy. So that's just for demonstration purposes. What's up, Ben? How you doing, man? Thanks for tuning in. So I'm just going through and sort of selectively simplifying certain areas. I think there's a little bit too much detail in the image at the moment. I also think we can do something like this. Let's go Make an adjustment layer for hue and saturation. Turn the saturation way down, the darkness way down, right? And we're going to get into that in a minute. But first, turn that off. I'm going to feather out the edges of these photos. Just kind of blend that in. All right, it's getting better. It's a little more even. And so now I've got this hue saturation layer that I've cranked the saturation and darkness down on. I'm just going to go into this mask and I can start brushing areas out, just bringing back some of that saturation. We've got these glows here. You can really pump those up a little bit. Just build up little layers of detail and variation in the color. Now I can see how this might start looking like some armor or something like that. Now I'm going to introduce another texture in here, which I think might help. This might help everything out. I'm going to do a similar treatment where I'm just going to add this image and I'm going to duplicate it and do a kind of a symmetrical treatment again. Oops. And this I'm going to use to just sort of drive a little bit more texture and randomness in color into the piece. So I'm going to group these, turn the opacity down. Let's go to overlay. All right, you can see now we're getting a little bit more of an organic feel. Let's see what that does for us. I'm getting a little bit of like an H.R. Geiger Aliens kind of feel from this. Let's flip it. Oops. Let's see if better. Actually, I think I do like this arrangement a little better. I'd like to get some detail kind of going over the shoulder. I want to get some lighter areas there, so we get some sort of shoulder pads. And I'd like to get something down here, almost like a, like there's, what do you call it? Like a breathing apparatus or some sort of comms device or something in there. So let's check that out. I see we have this sort of detail here in the shoulder that I really dig. What is that? I think I'm trying to figure out what that might be. Let's see if we can find that. I bet that's this shape here. So I'm going to go in and make that a little more dramatic. Let's really get some darks in there. And we can grab a lighter color. Let's see what we get. Yeah, there we go. I'm holding shift here as I'm drawing horizontally, which makes the line straight there. I think what's going on here is we have a little bit too much of the same size detail everywhere. It's a little bit too even, and I want to create, additional points of interest. So what we need to do, I think, is simplify things, make some of these lines a little thicker, and create areas of high contrast. And see, what I like about this is it allows you to iterate quickly because you can quickly swap in different images. You can make use of the detail that's sort of built into the stock images that you find. And having, like sometimes the hardest thing to work with is sort of a blank canvas. Some artists especially feel that way, that just adding something to react to, adding something that'll give you randomness maybe is the right word, or just something to work against, right? And like the details in this photo, you can see I'm sort of picking things that draw my eye and exaggerating them. So it gives you like a sort of starting point, which can be really, really useful. See, I'm not actually loving the way that worked, so I'm going to turn that off. Here's a beautiful thing. I should also mention as I'm drawing here that it looks like so this show I stream in 3 locations. I stream it on YouTube, on Periscope, which goes to Twitter, and on Twitch. Now, pretty much all of my viewership is on YouTube, and it looks like Twitter is going to be discontinuing Periscope in the next few months. So I think I'm going to be discontinuing the same, and I'll probably be just streaming to YouTube in the future. So apologies to anyone who watches on one of those channels I'll be getting rid of. Hopefully you'll come enjoy the stream over on YouTube. And if you can't, well, I apologize. It just doesn't make sense to do it that way anymore. All right. I think this area is kind of too detailed and complicated, so I'm going to just push that back. Let's make a new layer. I'll make that a bunch darker. So that's a bit better. And again, we can add to this shoulder pad area. So I'm going to just make one that's set to screen, new layer that's set to screen. I'm going to come in with a white brush, just kind of lighten all this up. As you probably know, any area that's lighter in this displacement will get pushed further from the surface. That didn't work as I'd hoped. I'm going to add another light in here, which I think will help help make some of those details and displacements a little more visible. Oops. Turn the displacements up a little bit, which is nice. This is giving us a little bit more, a little bit more height to our bumps. The thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on this Gaussian filter and turn it to maybe 2, which is just going to smooth things out a touch, knock down some of the tinier bits of noise, which I think works pretty well. Now, what's really interesting about this technique is obviously that the source material that you push into the image will, dramatically affect the output. So what I want to do is pull up some of the other ones I've done, just so you can see sort of the range again. Now that you've seen the technique, let's go back and revisit the sort of range of things you can create with this, depending on the type of material that you're inputting, the type of images, I should say. So this one obviously has got a lot more color and more of an organic feel. This guy, I used a picture of a leaf, like a macro picture of a leaf, and that got me a much more sort of organic, leafy kind of feel, right? This guy almost looks like a stick bug or an insect. This one was much more painterly, and I actually also played with the luminance or the emission channel in Octane, added some of that texture there. Let's see what else. This one was like oil paint textures. This one was circuitry, and I went ahead and made most of the circuitry grayscale. Then I just picked a couple of the more interesting shapes in the circuitry to colorize and make these details. This one was actually like some glitch imagery. I forget exactly. I think this one may have been some imagery from a factory as well, and I went ahead and modified. Now we've got some cool detail on the helmet here, but I feel like it's not refined enough. I think we need to pick some areas to highlight, some to push back. So I'm just going to actually, the center part, I'm going to make it dark. Let's push some of that back as well. Add in some stripes here. Let's also go ahead and add our visor in. To do that, all I'm going to do is grab our original sphere, scale it down just a touch. Let's make a specular material for that. What I'm going to do is let's turn the roughness up just a touch. Reflection, let's keep it high. Let's turn the index up to like 1.5. That's more reflective. Maybe we should also add some scattering. So scattering is going to drive the color. Let's make that like, sorry, I have that backwards. Absorption is going to drive the color. I think scattering is going to drive the darkness. Right? Do I have that right? Nope, I think I have that backwards. Cool. And if you want it to get crazy, you could even add a little light in there so that our buddy's face is lit from the inside, that sci-fi helmet kind of look. I think the last thing I'll do, maybe we'll get crazy and make like a skin texture person inside there very quickly. All right, so I'm gonna make some fairly big changes just in spirit of iterating. I'm gonna copy material. I'm gonna make a copy this material. I'm actually, to be honest, there's some cool stuff going on, but I'm not 100% loving what's going on, so I'm gonna just keep iterating. I'm just gonna grab all this, turn the opacity way down. Let's put that new material into, sorry, that new texture map into the new material. So I'm gonna grab V2, and of course you got to apply it. Right? You can see much more subtle. Give us some different stuff to react to. Maybe we play with the mandala effect a little bit here. So actually, let's do that. I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to go to our symmetry settings. I'm going to go to 6 on this mandala count. Also know that this is not exactly in the middle where I want it. I want things to be emanating from the center point, from the chest. And what I know I can do is, once I set the amount, I can also set the placement of the symmetry center. Hit enter, and now everything's going to be symmetrical from that point. which is what I want. This is going to be a much more organic look now. So let's grab that and do our little reload thing. That looks a bit like a snowflake. Let's keep pushing it. I actually think we can move this down some. You see how quickly you can get really dramatically different results. Thanks, Caesar. Yeah, I am a bit zoned in. Gotten less chatty as the episode has gone on. That typically happens as I'm sorting out details. Hopefully some of the value comes from just seeing how other artists work. And I might try one last thing to kind of smooth everything out. I'm liking how everything's looking generally. Just a little bit too much going on in here. I'm going to try something. Basically just going to select every layer. I'm going to hold Option and drag and duplicate them. Command E, push them all together. I'm just going to blur it just a little bit. Gauge blur. Yeah, let's call it 1 pixel. I'm going to save that. Let's see what that gets us. Not exactly what I thought it would, to be honest. That's, I think, because we didn't get our transparency just like I'd like it. Let me try that again, this time including the background. That's better. Run that gauge blur again, save it, reload. And things are a little smoother. Let's zoom in and check out what we've got. What's up, Mike? How's it going? The rare Periscope commenter. Thanks, Mizanar. Appreciate that. Oops. And of course, because this is all driven by a Photoshop file, you can do crazy stuff. I'm just going to try this. Let's go hue saturation. We want like a red and orange guy. Okay, and then I can do that thing again where I go into this mask and just brush some of that out. And now you can see of course we started with a like a reference image, but at this point with all the painting and the symmetry and all the different things we've done, it really looks nothing like what we started with. And boom, there's a very different set of armor. I even like this one better. Now that we're on top of that, let's actually do one last thing. Let's get in with some like hot orange yellow and add in just some smaller details. Maybe something with skinny lines will be the bit of detail we need to kind of push this piece over the edge. Let's see what that looks like. Too thin, I think. It's a little bit kind of wimpy. Don't like it. Getting rid of it. Working in layers is a beautiful thing. You know, I don't think that's it either. I really think I could play all day. And in fact, I spent a few days last week just really playing with this kind of thing. I should love the way this looks here, this red to green kind of stripe. You don't really see it. That's kind of hidden up here. So let's try this. There we go. Turn that up. Gets us more of that color. It's kind of neat in grayscale too. And that's the other thing. So you can have a lot of fun in Photoshop doing this, and then the way you blend the different channels really makes a big difference as well. Here's roughness, like all the way down. We got that super glossy thing. We could use this image to drive roughness, which is pretty neat. Somewhere in there looks pretty good. Because, you know, some of these colors are kind of nice. I have actually, Caesar. Check it out. It was this guy. Or actually, just what I did was I used a color correction node inside of Octane to just really push the contrast, and then I put that color correction into the luminance channel. That's how we get this sort of glowing orange stuff. If you do that with the yellow, that would be kind of neat, I think. I'm going to reload this because I don't want that yellow in there, actually. This is pretty cool. I think you know, we could noodle around with this forever. We could throw in tons of different image options and paint and color correct and do all kinds of stuff. But you know, what I really wanted to do for this episode is share this technique that I've been working on over the last couple of days. Like I said earlier, I don't think this is going to be good for production models. The UVing is super inefficient, and obviously you've got all this displacement, and it's not going to be reflected in the actual geometry. But if you're trying to come up with you know, concepts and you want to iterate quickly and work sort of rough and loosely, this is an excellent way to do that. And it's also, I think, just fun to play around with those symmetry brushes inside of Photoshop. So all that said and done, hopefully you picked up a technique or two, learned a thing here or there. If you found it useful, please subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share it with a pal. If you have any specific questions or ideas for future topics on the show, please drop a comment in the description below. If you want to support the practice and what I'm doing, check out the link in the description. There's different ways you can you know, donate either on a regular basis and earn some perks, or just, you know, buy your buddy here a cup of coffee and do a one-time donation. Either way, really appreciate it. The social media is at DLGNCE on Twitter and Instagram. You can keep up with the work that I'm putting out. Actually, if you check out my Twitter page, you'll see I posted a whole bunch of these previous concepts. So you can take a closer look at them there. The website is diligence.studio. And until next week, this is Stuart saying thank you so much for tuning in. Appreciate each and every one of you, and have a great week. See ya.